Good morning all and welcome to the Vicarage here at St Bart's and St Anne's at Penn on this beautiful sunny Monday morning. Lovely to see you. Hope you had a great weekend. We did. We had a cracking weekend in church. We had another record congregation at St Bart's on Sunday morning and a great confirmation service Sunday evening. Thank you everybody for your prayers and well done you candidates. I know 2 or 3 of you watch. Well done, you were brilliant and congratulations to you. And I really pray that God will continue to bless you and sustain you and guide you and really through you for the rest of your journey with him for the rest of your life. So God bless you. Well done all you guys. And thank you everybody for your prayers, and a great weekend was had by all. We are working our way through the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians, and we are basically coming to the conclusion of it this week. We're in chapter 11 now, reading verses 1 to 15. So 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting to read at verse 1. Here goes. And Paul writes, I wish you would bear with me in a little foolishness. Do bear with me. I feel a divine jealousy for you, for I promised you in marriage to one husband to present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. But I'm afraid that as a serpent deceived Eve by its cunning, your thoughts have been led astray from a sincere and a pure devotion to Christ. For if someone comes and proclaims another Jesus than the one we proclaimed, or if you receive a different spirit from the one you received, or a different gospel from the one you accepted, you submit to it readily enough. I think I'm not in the least inferior to these super apostles. I may be untrained in speech, but not in knowledge. Certainly in every way and in all things, we've made this evident to you. Did I commit a sin by humbling myself so that you might be exalted, because I proclaimed God's news to you, God's good news to you free of charge? I robbed other churches by accepting support from them in order to serve you. And when I was with you and was in need, I did not burden anyone, for my needs were supplied by the friends who came from Macedonia. So I refrained and will continue to refrain from burdening you in any way. As the truth of Christ is in me, this boast of mine will not be silenced in the regions of Achaia. And why? Because I do not love you? God knows I do. And what do? I will also continue to do, in order to deny an opportunity to those who want an opportunity to be recognized as our equals in what they boast about. For such boasters are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it's not strange if his ministers also disguise themselves as ministers of righteousness. Their end will match their deeds. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Paul, I think one of the hardest things Paul must have experienced in life is the awful realization that you can't be in more than one place at a time. And Paul went round various places in the Middle East, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ and starting churches. And he stayed in them for quite a while before moving to the next place, and so on and so on and so on. And I think one of the hardest things for Paul, especially when he ended up getting banged up in prison, will have been watching his churches from a distance and not being able to do anything about it. Because like I said, he isn't able to be in more than one place at a time. And I think especially his problem must have been for the Corinthians, because he knows that whilst he's been away, whilst he's been doing other things and preaching the gospel elsewhere or in prison elsewhere or wherever it was around the Middle East, other people had come in and they'd preached a rather different message to him. Other people had come and they preached a rather different message about Jesus than the one he'd done. And other people have come in and kind of diluted the message. And Paul is really worried about the Corinthians as a result. And Paul gives us 3 reasons this morning why he's really concerned about the Corinthians. And I think there are things that we can learn from this. Firstly this, Paul really cared about the Corinthians. And it worried him because he really cared about them. And oddly enough, though, he didn't care about them for himself. He wanted to present them as totally devoted to Christ. He was totally devoted to Christ, and he wanted his disciple, and he wanted his churches to be as well. As he was totally committed to Jesus, he wanted his Christians to be totally committed to Jesus too. And he describes himself as being a bit like a father of a bride who wants to present his daughter, totally to be committed in her new marriage to her new husband. Similarly, Paul here uses a similar analogy. He says, I wanted to be able to present you as like a chaste bride to Christ. And he's concerned because he cares about the Corinthians. He wants them, like him, to be totally devoted to Jesus. And he's concerned because these other people are coming in and they're kind of diluting the message, and it's not quite the same, and they're saying rather different things, and so on. And Paul is concerned because he cares about the people, and because he cares about them, he wants them to be totally devoted to Jesus, and he's concerned that these people are saying something rather different. So that's the first reason Paul is concerned. And I think it's right today, A, that we care about people. Ministers especially should love and care about their people, as I said the other day. But also, we as a church need to be totally devoted to Jesus. It's interesting how, how other things can come in and other ideas and so on. But actually, we need to be totally devoted to Jesus. And let's hear that message. Let's, church leaders, let's love our people. And people of God, let's be totally devoted to Jesus, as Paul prayed the Corinthians would be and all his churches would be. That's the first thing. I think the second thing, the reason Paul is concerned, is because he's basically saying about the Corinthians that they're fickle, that they kind of accept anything that's said to them. And it seems to have been a kind of a Greek thing at the time. When you listen to Paul when he went to Athens, the philosophers, they just loved anything new. Whereas other societies like things which are old and ancient with historical gravitas. At the time, the Greeks seemed to appreciate anything new. It was new ideas, and anything new seemed to be what the Greek philosophers were really interested in. And Paul seems to be saying here that he's concerned about the Corinthians because they're fickle. They accept anything new, and they seem to be uncritically accepting any new ideas that are brought to them. And it's a bit of an odd one really, because actually being open-minded, generally most of us would say, is a good thing. It's right that we shouldn't be closed. That's kind of cultish behaviour really. It's right that we should be open to new ideas. But I do think that actually we should be totally sold out for Jesus. That we should listen, that we should be courteous, but actually nothing should come between us and Jesus. As I say, it's right that we embrace the society of the world we live in today, that we listen to people, that we are aware of the world around us, that we're aware of ideas that are floating around, that we are, so to speak, we are aware, we are in tune with the people around. It's important that we live in the 21st century rather than spending most of our time in the 15th century. Absolutely right. We need to be aware of the world around us. We need to, live in the world in the time that God has put us, rather than pretending it's some other era. But on the other hand, we should still, in our context, be totally devoted to Jesus. And it's fascinating, really, I think, how quickly we get distracted. So let's learn from the Corinthians, and let's not be fickle. Let's be sold out for Jesus. So you've got that Paul loved the people and he wanted them to be totally warm with Jesus. And you've also got the fact that the people at the time, the Corinthians, were fickle and they were almost too open-minded. And let's make sure that we are sold out for Jesus too. I think the third reason Paul is concerned about these people coming in is they talk a good talk. And they've clearly got qualifications, and they're clearly terribly well thought of. And Paul, in quite a fairly heavy dose of sarcasm, describes them as being like super apostles. It wasn't these super apostles that are kind of these kind of people. And they talk a good talk, and they're clearly terribly so well thought of, and they've clearly got great experience of, or whatever, this kind of thing. And that somebody's obviously putting a good word for them, this type of thing. And Paul is concerned, and this thing about payment. And one of the things they were boasting about is that I think you get the impression they're kind of saying that they're professionals, whereas Paul's an amateur. Paul made a big thing of not being beholden to the people he was preaching to. Paul used to either raise money himself for his own missionary work, making tents, or actually had a gift brought from Macedonia. But Paul made a special point of never being financially beholden to the people he was talking to. And that's quite important, really, because actually, if you're financially beholden to the people you're talking to, quite often it can influence the way you do and make people less objective in their ministry. So Paul made, it's very important to Paul. He was never beholden to the people he was talking to. He was always either self-financing or brought gifts from elsewhere that helped him on his way. And these other people coming in and saying, "Oh, because we're professional," whereas Paul's just a mere amateur. And they're obviously describing themselves as like, super apostles with qualifications and references and all this type of stuff. And Paul is saying, I'm not fazed by these people. I know I love you. I know I've always loved you, and I always will love you, and I always love you. I know that what I say is true, and God will show that what I say is true. But Paul is concerned because these new people coming in with their new ideas and their qualifications, and their professionalism and all this stuff. But Paul is concerned that the people of Corinth are going to be distracted by the fact that these people talk a good talk. And what he's saying is keep focused on Jesus and remember that he, Paul, always has been. So here we have Paul talking to a group of Corinthians who he clearly loves. And he says, he is concerned about the Corinthians in all sorts of different ways. He's concerned because he says that they're fickle and they can easily be they seem to be easily pulled away. And let's make sure that we remain focused on Jesus. He's also concerned about these people because new people come in that might talk the good talk. But Paul says above all that he loves the people, he cares about them. And as he is devoted to Jesus, he wants them to be devoted to Jesus too. And that's something that we can learn from today. And especially our confirmation candidates. You guys watching today, God bless you, well done today. And let's hear the message. Let's keep focused, hook, line and sinker on Jesus. Let's focus on putting him first and let's go through with him. God bless you and have a lovely day.